and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling. Chapter 4 The Leaky Cauldron. It took Harry several days to get used to his strange new freedom. Never before had he been able to get up whenever he wanted or eat whenever he fancied. He could even go wherever he liked, as long as it was in Diagon Alley, and as this long gobbled street was packed with the most fascinating wizarding shops in the world, Harry felt no desire to break his world, to fudge and stray back into the Muggle world. Harry ate breakfast each morning in the Leaky Cauldron, where he liked watching the other guests, funny little witches from the country, up for a day's shopping, venerable-looking wizards arguing over the latest article on Transfiguration today, wild-looking warlocks, raucous dwarfs, and once what looked suspiciously like a hag who ordered a plate of raw liver from behind a thick woolen balaclava. After breakfast, Harry would go out into the backyard, take out his wand, tap the third brick from the left above the dustbin, and stand back as the archway into a Diagon Alley opened in the wall. Harry spent the long sunny days exploring the shops and eating under the brightly colored umbrellas outside cafes, where his fellow diners were showing each other their purchases. It's a lunoscope, old boy, no more messing around with moon charts, see? Or else discussing the case of Sirius Black. Personally, I wouldn't let any of the children out alone until he's back in Azkaban. Harry didn't have to do his homework under the blankets by twinkling torchlight anymore. Now he could sit in the bright sunshine outside Florine Fortescue's ice cream parlor, finishing all his essays with occasional help from Florine Fortescue himself, who, apart from knowing a great deal about medieval witch burnings, gave Harry free sundaes every half hour. Once Harry had refilled his money bag with gold galleons, silver sickles, and bronze nuts from his vault at Gringotts, he needed to exercise a lot of self-control, not to spend the whole lot at once. He had to keep reminding himself that he had 5 years to go at Hogwarts, and how it would feel to ask the Dursleys for money for spellbooks, to stop himself buying a handsome set of solid gold gobstones, a wizarding game rather like marbles, in which the stones squirted a nasty-smelling liquid into the other player's face when they lost a point. He was sorely tempted, too, by the perfect moving model of the galaxy in a large glass bowl, which would have meant he never wanted to take another astronomy lesson. But the thing that tested Harry's resolution most appeared in his famous shop, Quality Quidditch Supplies, a week after he'd arrived at the Leaky Cauldron. Curious to know what the crowd in the shop was staring at, Harry edged his way inside and squeezed in amongst the excited witches and wizards until he glimpsed a newly erected podium on which was mounted the most magnificent broom he had ever seen in his life. "Just come out, prototype," a square-jawed wizard was telling his companion. "It's the fastest broom in the world, isn't it, Dad?" squeaked a boy younger than Harry, who was swinging off his father's arm. "Irish International Sites just buzzed in and ordered for 7 of these beauties," the proprietor of the shop told the crowd, "and the favorites for the World Cup." A large witch in front of Harry moved, and he was able to read the sign next to the broom. "The Firebolt. This state-of-the-art racing boom sports a steam-lined, super-fine handle of ash, treated with a diamond hard polish and hand-numbered with its own registration number. Each individually selected twig in the boom tail has been honed to aerodynamic perfection, giving the Firebolt an unsurpassable balance and pinpoint precision. The Firebolt has an acceleration of 0 to 150 miles an hour in 10 seconds, and incorporates the unbreakable brake control. Price and request. Price and request? Harry didn't like to think how much gold the Firebolt could cost. He had never wanted anything so much in his whole life, but he had never lost a Quidditch match in his new Nimbus 2000, and what was the point in emptying his Gringotts vault for the Firebolt when he had a very good broom already? Harry didn't ask for the prize, but he returned almost every day after that, just to look at the Firebolt. There were, however, things that Harry needed to buy. He went to the apothecary to replenish his store of potions ingredients, and his cool ropes were now several inches too short in the arm and leg. He was at Madame Malkin's ropes for all occasions and brought new ones. Most important of all, he had to buy his new school books, which would include those for his 2 new subjects, care of magical creatures and divination. Harry got a surprise as he looked in the bookshop window. Instead of the usual display of golden rose spellbooks the size of pavement slabs, there was a large iron cage behind the glass which held about 100 copies of the Monster Book of Monsters. Torn pages were flying everywhere as the books struggled with each other, locked together in furious wrestling matches and snapping aggressively. Harry pulled his book list out of his pocket and consulted it for the first time. The Monster Book of Monsters was listed as the set of book of care of magical creatures. Now Harry understood why Hagrid had said it would become unuseful. He felt relieved. He had been wondering whether Hagrid wanted to help with some terrifying new pet. As Harry entered Flourish and Bloods, the manager came hurrying towards him. "Hogwarts," he said abruptly, "come to get your new books?" "Yes," said Harry. "I need—" "Get out of the way," said the manager, impatiently brushing Harry aside. He drew on a pair of very thick gloves, picked up a large knobbly walking stick, and proceeded towards the door of the Monster Books cage. "Hang on," said Harry quickly. "I've already got one of those." "Have you?" A look of enormous relief spread over the manager's face. "Thanks heavens for that. I've been bitten 5 times already this morning." A loud ripping noise rent the air. 2 of the monster books had seized a third and were pulling it apart. "Stop it! Stop it!" cried the manager, walking the walking stick through the bars and knocking the books apart. "I'm never stocking them again. Never. It's been Beldam. I thought we'd seen the worst when we brought 200 copies of the Invisible Book of Invisibility. Cost a fortune, and we never found them. Well, is there anything else I can help you with?" "Yes," said Harry, looking down his book list. "I need Unfogging the Future by Cassandra Walbatsky." "Ah, studying divination, are you?" said the manager, stripping off his gloves and leading Harry into the back of the shop, where there was a corner devoted to fortune-telling. A small table was stacked with volumes such as Predicting the Unpredictable, Insulate Yourself Against Shocks, and Broken Bowls, When Fortunes Turn Fool. "Here you are," said the manager, who had climbed a set of steps to take down a thick black-bound book. "Unfogging the Future, very good guide to all your basic fortune-telling methods. Palmistry, crystal balls, burn and trails." But Harry wasn't listening. His eyes had fallen on another book, which was among the display of the small table. Death Omens. What to do when you know the worst is coming. "Oh, I wouldn't read that if I were you," said the assistant lightly, looking to see what Harry was staring at. "You started seeing death omens everywhere. It's enough to frighten anyone to death." But Harry continued to stare at the front cover of the book. It showed a dog large as bear, with gleaming eyes. It looked oddly familiar. The assistant pressed Unfogging the Future into Harry's hands. "Anything else?" he said. "Yes," said Harry, tearing his eyes away from the dogs and guzzily consulting his book list. "I need Intermediate Transfiguration and the Standard Books of Spells, Grade 3. Harry emerged from Flourish and Blots 10 minutes later with his new books under his arms and made his way back to the Leaky Cauldron, hardly noticing where he was going and bumping into several people. He trampled up the stairs to his room, went inside and tipped his books onto his bed. Somebody had been in to tidy. The windows were open and the sound was pouring inside. Harry could hear the buses rolling in the unseen Muggle street behind him, and the sound of the invisible crowd before in Diagon Alley. He caught sight of himself in the mirror over the basin. "I can't have been a death omen," he told his reflection. I was panicking when I saw that thing in Magnolia Crescent. It was probably just a stray dog." He raised his hands automatically and tried to make his hair lie flat. "You're fighting a losing battle here, dear," said his mirror in a wheezy voice. As the days slipped by, Harry started looking whenever he went for a sign of Ron or Hermione. Plenty of Hogwarts students were arriving in Diagon Alley now, with the start of term so near. Harry met Seamus Finnegan and Dee Thomas, his fellow Gryffindors, in Quality Quidditch Supplies, where they, too, were ogling the firebolt. He also ran into the real Neville Longbottom, a round-faced, forgetful boy, outside the Flourish and Blots. Harry didn't stop to chat. Neville appeared to have mislaid his book list and was being told off by his very formidable-looking grandmother. Harry hoped she never found out that he pretended to be Neville while on the run from the Ministry of Magic. Harry woke on the last day of the holidays, thinking that he would at least meet Ron and Hermione tomorrow on the Hogwarts Express. He got up, dressed, went for a last book at Firebolt, and was just wondering what he'd had lunch when someone yelled his name and he returned. "Harry! Harry!" They were where? 4 of them, sitting inside the Florian's Fortitude's ice cream parlor, Ron looking incredibly freaky, Hermione Wary Brown both waving fantastically at him. "Finally," said Ron, grinning at Harry. He sat down. "We went to the Leaky Cauldron, but they said you'd left, and we went to Flourish and Blots, and Madame Malkin's, and I got all my school stuff last week, Harry explained. And how come you know I'm staying at the Leaky Cauldron? Dad, said Ron simply. Mr. Weasley, who worked at the Ministry of Magic, would of course have heard the whole story of what happened to Aunt March. Did you really blow up your aunt, Harry? Said Hermione in a very serious voice. I didn't mean to, said Harry while Ron roared his laughter. I just lost control. It's not funny, Ron, said Hermione sharply. Honestly, I'm amazed Harry wasn't expelled. So am I, admitted Harry. Forget expelled. I thought I was going to be arrested. He looked at Ron. Your dad doesn't know why Fudge let me off, does he? Probably because it's you, isn't it? Checked Ron, still chuckling. Famous Harry Potter and all that. I'd hate to see what the Minister do to me if I blew up an aunt. Mind you, they'd have to dig me up first before because Mom would have killed me. Anyway, you can ask Dad yourself this evening. We're staying at the Leaky Cauldron tonight too, so you can come to King's Cross with us tomorrow. Hermione's there as well. Hermione nodded, beaming. Mom and Dad dropped me off this morning with all my Hogwarts things. Excellent, said Harry happily. So, Harry got all your new books and stuff? Look at this, said Ron, pulling a long thin box out of her bag and opening it. Brand new wand, 14 inches, willow containing 1 unicorn tail hair. And we've got all our books. He pointed at a large bag under his chair. What about those monster books, eh? The assistant nearly cried when we said we wanted 2. What's all that, Hermione? Asked, pointing at not 1 but 3 bulky bags in the chair next to her. Well, I'm taking more new subjects than you, aren't I? Said Hermione. Those are my books for arithmetic, care of magical creatures, divination, study of ancient runes, Muggle studies. What are you doing Muggle studies for? Said Ron, rolling his eyes at Harry. You're Muggle-born. Your mom and dad are Muggles. You already know all about Muggles. But it'll be fascinating to study them from the wizarding point of view, said Hermione earnestly. Are you planning to eat or sleep at all this year? Hermione asked Harry while Ron sniggered. Hermione ignored them. I've still got 10 galleons, she said, checking her purse. It's my birthday in September, and Mom and Dad gave me some money to get myself an early birthday present. How about a nice book? Said Ron innocently. No, I don't think so, said Hermione composedly. I really want to know. I mean, Harry's got Hedwig and you got Arrow. I haven't, said Ron. Arrow's a family owl. All I've got is Scrubbers. He pulled his pet rat out of his pocket. And I want to get him checked over, he added, planting Scrabbles on the table in front of them. I don't think Egypt agreed with him. Scrubbers was looking thinner than usual, and there was a definite droop to his whiskers. There's a magical creature sharp just over there, said Harry, who knew Diagon Alley very well by now. You can see if they've got anything for Scabbers, and Hermione can get her owl.